Shalom, family. This is Brother Daryl. Now, before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to point out that the Bible contains the true history of the world, and it should be taken literally when it describes specific events. We live in an age of mockery and unbelief, and this particular message goes out to the remnant. Be strong in your faith and trust in the words of the Most High. They're sacred and true. Today we'll be discussing the real Mount Sinai and the physical proof of a Hebrew exodus. Let's get to work, family. This is a photo of the Ipuwer Papyrus. It's named after its author, who is an Egyptian, and it's currently being held in the Dutch National Museum of Antiquities in Leiden in the Netherlands. It was translated by a British Egyptologist named Alan Gardner in 1909. The Ipuwer Papyrus is estimated to have been written anywhere between 1600 and 1100 BC, and that huge date range puts it within the estimated time of when Moses lived, which is 1391 to 1271 BC. And this papyrus is a first-hand account of a series of devastating events that brought Egypt to its knees, and it's eerily similar to the story told in the book of Exodus. Here are some of the similar events. You had water that turned to blood, fiery hailstones that destroyed the crops, a deadly plague that killed off much of the Egyptian livestock, a supernatural darkness that plunged the land of Egypt into despair, the inexplicable deaths of the firstborn, a massive pillar of living fire, and slaves suddenly becoming fabulously wealthy. Shout out to the United Snakes on this one. History has a way of repeating itself, partner, so y'all just stay tuned. The Ipuwer Papyrus is our first piece of archaeological evidence that validates the biblical account of the Exodus. So when Pharaoh finally decided to let our ancestors go, they were packed up, dripping with gold, and carrying freshly baked but unleavened bread. It was definitely time to skip town. So let's move forward and discuss the actual route of the Exodus. This map depicts the path taken by the Israelites during their Exodus. They traveled day and night for 3 days with great speed and covered a lot of ground before Pharaoh decided to mount up and come after them. Contrary to popular opinion, the real Mount Sinai is located in Saudi Arabia and is now known as Jabal al-Lawz. The false Mount Sinai was founded and designated by Queen Helena, who is Constantine's mother. And Constantine was the heathen Roman emperor responsible for blending Mithraism into the pure faith of the Israelites to create the Frankenstein religion now known as Christianity. So needless to say, that whole family lacks credibility when it comes to anything pertaining to Torah, including the location of Mount Sinai. Fortunately for us, we're smart enough to read the writings of Paul in Galatians 4:25 and recognize that Mount Sinai is clearly located in Arabia. So I'll resist the temptation to make a petty remark about literacy rates among the Roman nobility during Constantine's time, because we're trying to keep it classy today. So again, the real Mount Sinai is known as Jabal al-Lawz. And we're going to go to the scriptures for an explanation as to why the Israelites didn't make a beeline for the promised land and instead took a more circuitous route. Exodus chapter 12, verse 37. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men, beside children. Exodus chapter 13, verse 17. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war, and they return to Egypt. Now Yahweh had just freed the Israelites from Egypt, and he recognized that his new nation was not ready to see war with the Philistines. The Most High also wanted to demonstrate his power by drawing the Egyptians into a devastating trap in the Gulf of Aqaba. Now remember, the God of Israel is a God of war. Now, this is something that the Christian church doesn't like to bring up, but the whole world is going to be reminded of that when Christ returns as the right hand of God to crush the armies of the world in the valley of Megiddo. Spoiler alert. So anyway, back to the discussion at hand. The Israelites were led south through the wilderness of the so-called Sinai Peninsula. Exodus chapter 14, verses 2 through 4. Speak unto the children of Israel that they turn and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baal-zephon. Before it shall ye encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, the wilderness hath shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them. And I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his hosts, that the Egyptians may know that I am Yah. So Moses led the Israelites through a system of narrow canyon passages, which eventually led to Nuweiba Beach. This is what the canyon looked like. When the Israelites began to clear this area and spread out onto the beachhead, the Egyptians caught up with them. Exodus chapter 14, verse 9. But the Egyptians pursued after them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, all his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea, beside Pi-hahiroth, before Baal-zephon. Josephus Flavius was a Judean historian who offered additional details which served to confirm Nuweiba Beach as the location of the Exodus crossing. According to his book, Antiquities of the Jews, Book 2, Chapter 15 and verse 3, they, being the Egyptians, also seized on the passages by which they imagined the Hebrews might fly, shutting them up between inaccessible precipices and the sea. For there was on each side a ridge of mountains that terminated at the sea, which were impassable by reason of their roughness, and obstructed their flight. Wherefore they there pressed upon the Hebrews with their army, where the ridges of the mountains were closed with the sea, which army they placed at the chops of the mountains, that they might deprive them of any passage into the plain. Here's a second look at that canyon. As you can see, the Israelites would have been completely hemmed in. This is Nuweiba Beach. Over 1 million Israelites were spread out in the area, and they were scared to death. This is when Yahweh worked what is easily the greatest miracle ever performed in the Old Testament by splitting the Red Sea. Exodus chapter 14, verse 21. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yahweh caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. So the Israelites crossed over a fairly narrow land bridge in order to escape the Egyptians. It was only about a half a mile wide. And on either side of that land bridge, there was a steep drop off of the seafloor. The water would have risen up on either side of that pathway for at least 100 feet. So that would have been pretty dramatic. Yahweh gave Moses the power to split the Red Sea and provide a miraculous escape for the Israelites. And at the same time, the Most High was preparing a deadly trap for the Egyptians that would make all the nations of Canaan fear him. Exodus chapter 14, verse 23. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. Verses 26 through 28. And Yahweh said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it, and Yahweh overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. So if an entire army of Egyptians died in the Gulf of Aqaba, we should expect to find some kind of evidence, right? As it turns out, there's plenty. This is a gold-plated Egyptian chariot wheel left in the Gulf of Aqaba. Coral doesn't grow very well on gold, which is why this wheel remained exposed. This is a chariot wheel with its axle. It's been encrusted with coral. It's easier to get the picture with the help of this image added onto the photo. Here's another coral encrusted wheel with 4 spokes. See the 90-degree angles? That doesn't occur in nature. You can also see where the axle extends upward. Clearly, this is the remains of an Egyptian chariot wheel. This is a fossilized human femur bone found encrusted with coral in the Gulf of Aqaba. It was confirmed through a test performed at the osteology department at Stockholm University. Please recognize that all the people who mock the Bible have simply been blinded by the world's lies. The Bible tells you that Satan became the god of this world when Adam fell. Satan controls the government. Satan controls the education system. Satan controls the media. Satan controls NASA. And his entire system is designed to discredit the Bible. Stop falling for it. So let's keep it moving, family. There's plenty more evidence on the other side of the water. After crossing the Red Sea and witnessing the complete destruction of the Egyptian army, the Israelites journeyed south through the coastal mountains of Saudi Arabia for 3 days before stopping at Marah. The waters were bitter at Marah, and according to Exodus chapter 15 verse 25, Moses cast a tree into the spring and made the water sweet. From there, they continued south to Elim. Exodus chapter 15 verse 27, and they came to Elim, where were 12 wells of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. Elim is located in the modern-day town of Magna, also pronounced Machna. It is an oasis marked by a large palm tree grove with several natural wells. Notice that the Arabians have it named the Well of Moses. The real Edomites, the Arabs, know exactly where the Exodus route is. They've just been hiding it from you. Now this area perfectly matches the description of Elim given in the biblical account. It's an oasis with palm trees everywhere. And it even has abundant water and natural wells. So after resting for a few days, the Israelites broke camp and continued their journey northeast from Elim to the plain of Rephidim, where they encountered a very large rock. This rock is 50 feet tall, family. This is the rock of Oreb mentioned in the scriptures. The Rock of Oreb is located just northwest of Jabal al-Lawz, and I made a little beeline addition to the map to note the journey from Elim, which is closer to the coast, to the plain of Rephidim, which is located more inland. And hey, don't make fun of my image editing skills too much, family. I'm new at all this. So anyway, the Israelites were very thirsty by the time they arrived at Rephidim, and of course they complained to Moses about it, so Moses took the matter to the Most High, and he was told to strike the rock, and the rock would issue forth water. Exodus chapter 17, verse 6. Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Oreb, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. This rock not only has a massive split down the center, but the surrounding rocks also show signs of water erosion. This is definitely the place where it went down, family. Here's an artist's rendition of how it would have looked. So here's an overhead view of the entire area. See how it's labeled the rock split of Moses? People are discovering these things in this hour, okay? So the rock of Oreb is obviously located up there in the plain of Rephidim, which is northwest of the peak of Jabal al-Lawz, which again is Mount Sinai. So after the Israelites drank their fill of water, they had an encounter with the Amalekites, who probably showed up after they heard all about that water gushing in the middle of the desert. So the Amalekites were defeated, and the Israelites continued their trek toward Jabal al-Lawz. So after a long journey through the desert, and after their first victory in war as a people, the Most High descended upon Mount Sinai to deliver the divine law to our ancestors. Exodus chapter 19, verse 18. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because Yahweh descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. Now it would have been pretty impressive to see the creator of all things descend on that mountain in all of his power, in all of his glory. No wonder the Israelites were terrified. So here's what's interesting about Jabal al-Lawz. The top of the mountain appears to be darkened, and that's clearly due to the fiery cataclysm that marked the visitation of the Most High. Isn't that amazing? When you get the bird's eye, you can see that the top of that mountain is notably darker than the surrounding areas. That is not a coincidence. This is where it all went down, family. Doubt it not. Now, of course, as soon as Moses turned his back and went up the mountain to visit with the Most High for 40 days and 40 nights, the people went straight into idolatry by creating a golden calf. Exodus chapter 32, verses 1 through 5. And when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves unto Aaron and said unto him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him. And Aaron said unto them, Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, of your sons, and of your daughters, and bring them unto me. And the people brake off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them unto Aaron. And he received them at their hand, and fashioned it with a graving tool, after he had made it a molten calf. And they said, These be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt. And when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. This is a recreation of the infamous golden calf. It's the animal representation of the Egyptian deity Hathor, which is a false goddess that our ancestors would have become familiar with during their stay in Egypt. This is a depiction of Hathor in her human form. Notice the sun symbol above her head. The Egyptians loved them some sun worship. So you can see carvings representative of Hathor all around the base of Jabal al-Lawz, particularly at the foundation of the stones which served as the base of Aaron's altar. Here's a closer view, so you can see the cow right there with those same characteristic horns. There are carvings of the calf representation of Hathor all over the rocks near the base of Jabal al-Lawz. This is the nonsense that made the Most High so furious that he threatened to wipe out the Israelites and make a great nation of Moses alone. The Most High despises idolatry above all. Now, if you're celebrating any of the pagan holidays like Christmas or Easter or New Year's, Valentine's Day, Halloween, or any other of the feast days that aren't specifically listed in Leviticus chapter 23, you are guilty of this crime against the Most High. Don't believe me, do your research and make sure that you read Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 30 through 31. The God of Israel specifically forbids the appropriation of pagan holidays to celebrate him. He doesn't play. The last bit of archaeological proof from the camp that we'll discuss today is the remnant of a stone corral attached to an altar that was used for animal sacrifice. The only picture available from that vantage point is a little sloppy, so here's an artist's rendering of it. Here are a couple close-ups of the remains of the altar. Notice how these stones are completely uncut, in accordance with the commandment stated in Exodus chapter 20, verse 25, and reiterated again in Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 5. The Most High does not allow his servants to hew stone with iron tools. It profanes the stone. So clearly, this is exhibiting the customs of the Israelites. This is definitely a sign that this was the location of the true Mount Sinai. So in conclusion, family, please don't let anyone try to convince you that there's no archaeological proof that the Bible is real. The proof has been purposefully hidden. In these last days, many hidden things are coming to light, from the true identity of the chosen people, to the true nature of the universe, to the archaeological proof that the Bible is literally true. The book of Daniel prophesied that in the last days, knowledge would increase. Keep these things in mind as we await the coming of our Savior. So thanks for your time, family. All praise and honor to the Most High God in Christ, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Shalom.